Good evening and welcome to the Whiskey Lovers Society with me, Gert Retief, and tonight we are talking about Islay Whiskies from the Islay region of Scotland. And of course, for most people, when I talk about Islay Whiskies or they hear the word Islay Whiskies, the first thing that really comes to mind is that smoky, peaty, iodine, hospital, in-your-face TCP whiskey. Well, it's not always the case. And I've been doing a little bit of a regional series, the Speyside, the Highland. Tonight it's the turn of the Islay Whiskies. Not always my favorite subject. I've had a lot of hit and miss when it comes to the Islay Whiskies, when it comes to the peated whiskies. And sometimes I surprise myself in my whiskey journey of not always loving something, and when your palate changed over time, and when of course I started beginning to quite enjoying some of the peated whiskies. So it's time to talk a little bit on Islay whiskies, my top 5 favorite. I'll do also a little mention on the ones that did not make the cut this time. One of them I will show you now is the Bowmore 12 years old. Not a bad one. It does tick some of the nice boxes for me. Unfortunately, that 40% was a little bit of a kick in the never region. And yeah, but I did like it. Not really that much, but it is sometimes a pleasant winter warmer. The 18-year-old for me, if you want a little bit something more special, I think the Bowmore 18 is the way to go. But that one also did not make the list for me. So yeah, let's talk about the region of Islay in Scotland. And some of the distilleries that is available, and I'll put a map up so that you can also see them all. Vakil Holman, Brochladi, Port Charlotte, Bunnahabhain, Kulaila, Bowmore, Art, Lagavulin, Lefroy, Port Ellen, and then there's Gartbrek. I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly. Never heard of it. I've never even seen it. I'm not even sure if it's part of the Islay anymore. I just grabbed a random map of the internet just to give me a little bit, and maybe for you as well, to see what distilleries are available on the Islay region. So for tonight, I actually poured myself 2 whiskies, a Weedram, and didn't have much left. I'll tell you a little bit later when I come to this one. It's a tale of 2 cities for me. Well, a tale of 2 bottles for me. A younger brother and maybe the older sister, and the different contrasts that they have. Oh, I think I have it the other way around. This is the older sister and the younger brother. But we will come to that one a little bit later on. So if you go into Google and you ask Google or the OpenAI, what is the most sold Islay whiskies, they give you a nice list of 5, and of course Ardbeg always comes on that list, and yeah, they love the 10-year-old. You have the Lagavulin, and in most cases it will be the Lagavulin 16 years old. Lefroy, not going to make my list, never going to make my list. And of course we're talking about the 10-year-old Lefroy, cannot stand this stuff. The Bowmore 12, a little bit of a surprise. I think it's more about the price point. So it's not a very expensive whiskey, but for me it did not make the cut just because of that 40% ABV. And the last one that Google suggested is the Kulaila, the 12-year-old Kulaila. I also have a bottle of this one, a nice big fat 1-liter bottle, 12 years old, 43% ABV. Kulaila Distillery, Port Asking, Isle of Islay. Now, I do like this one. A little bit heavy, tarty in the beginning, but yeah, as you can see, the bottle is dropping nicely. This is my 2nd or 3rd bottle, so I do like it. I do like it in a cocktail, especially a little bit of a smokiness in a cocktail. quite a nice one at that. But this one also, unfortunately, did not make my list. So to start off my list, and it's something that I really enjoyed, and I've tried a couple of this distillery already, but for me the 10-year-old Port Charlotte Isle of Barley is still one of the nicest, mellow, sweet, smoky whiskey that I've tasted in a long time. It's got a nice light smoke. I'm a little bit surprised with that one, but it's definitely not a heavy smoked whiskey. Reminds me a little bit of a campfire in the distance, and somebody else's campfire always smells so much better than your own, especially if you put a little bit of a lamb chop on it. That smell from the distance is always so inviting. For me, the Port Charlotte 10 is that inviting whiskey, that one that you smell to, man, I wish I was sitting next to that campfire making my lamb chop. There's a light, soft citrus note on it. There's a little bit of a lemon preserve on it. There's also a light briny note, a little bit of a saltiness in it. Reminds me a little bit of a smoked fish, maybe a little bit of a haddock, or maybe a little bit of a smoked mackerel. Oh, reminds me of my youth, years and years ago, catching the fish, smoking the fish, or even at my old job, they used to sell this in the port. A guy would go around and selling the smoked mackerel. Really lovely, meaty, smoky, savory note. Absolutely fantastic on the nose. There's a little bit of a dusty note coming through, a little bit of an oaky note. There's not much alcohol-wise on the nose, which I really appreciate. Doesn't drink like or smell like a very young whiskey. And for me, the best, there's no hospital, there's no TCP, there's no Band-Aid, it's not a big tar note. So for me, that's quite pleasant on the nose. Love the nose, definitely something that I appreciate on this one. On the taste, sweet, smoky, that smoke fish is still there. The alcohol definitely is showing up brilliantly in the taste. So there's a nice big alcohol bite, a hint of a tannin that comes out, and a little bit of a honey sweetness in the end, with that little bit of a smoke sticking to you, a little bit of a savory, a little bit of a bacony type of note coming out. Do love the taste. Do like this one, would definitely recommend it. The next one on my list, and of course it can't all be smoke and TCP and hospital, and I'm talking about the Bunnahabhain 12 years old. Now I would love to try the cask strength. I've been looking for this now for the last probably 5 months, trying to find a bottle here in Belgium. I cannot buy it in the UK. Customs here in Belgium are just plain stupid. They are adding so much duties and import taxes that it's, for me, it's just unbelievable. It's impossible. Well, I'm not paying stupid money to bring something into the country. And unfortunately in Belgium, it's not available. And of course, in even in the region, Netherlands, not available. Germany, not available. So yeah, I'm stuck with a normal 12-year-old. Bottled at 46.3% ABV. Natural color, non-chill filtered, ex-bourbon cask and ex-sherry cask. A little bit of a sherry monster, a big sherry influence on this one. And I do like it. I like the strength, that extra 46% ABV, and that it's non-chill filtered, really ticking the boxes for me. So on the taste, sweet, dark, red apples, some pear notes coming in. You get that raisins, you get that fruity component of the dried fruit, you get a little bit of a dates, a little bit of a figs. Definitely a sherry, big sherry influence whiskey. Vanilla, and then also a little bit of a oak coming out. Not a lot of oak, but there's a hint of that oakiness, and that alcohol is just for me perfect at that higher 46.3% ABV. Definitely something for the sweet whiskey lovers. That's something also for a beginner. Add a couple of drops of water, not much. For me, I drink it at that level. It's just perfect for me. But something that I do really appreciate. Give it a try. I know a lot of people are ranting and raving about this one, and I agree with them 100%. Perfect one, and love the nose, and I love the taste on this one. The next one on the list, Lagavulin 16. You have to put a Lagavulin 16 on it. I've tried a couple of them, the 8 years old. There was 11 years old that I've tried. But for me, always go back to the 16-year-old. 43% AVP, at least it's not 40% ex-bourbon cast. And also a little bit of an ex-sherry cast influence. But not overly peated. Well, for me it was not overly peated. 40-45 ppm. So I do like it, and I do like the fact, and I think that's a big thing for me, that little bit of that sherry cast that they add in the mix makes a big difference for me. Some of the whiskies can be a little bit of a miss for me. Lefroy, you are one of them. Sorry. Stunning nose, light, sweet smoke, vanilla, caramel, toffee, a little bit of a savory note, a little bit of a bacony, maybe a little bit of a ham note, a little bit of a distant bonfire note, strong alcohol on the nose. Now that was a little bit surprise for me. I didn't expect that, but it was a nice little kick of the alcohol in the nose. There's a briny note, a little salty air note coming out. Lovely sherry sweetness that makes it so pleasant for me. A little bit of a hint of an orange peel, and give it a little bit of time in the glass and it just gets sweeter and sweeter for me. On the taste, sweet, orange, smoky, and a little bit of a dry smoke. Well, doesn't really make sense, but it creates a little bit of a dryness when you taste it. You'll get a little bit of a dry mouthfeel. It's a little bit of a pepper note, a little bit of a oakiness on the taste, and of course that smoke. Oaky, smoky, nice, sweet whiskey. A little bit of a spiciness, and then of course that sherry comes through and it gives you that nice, not overly sweet sherry, but it does just tell you there is some sherry influences in it. Definitely some vanilla, that dried fruits coming through. Little bit of an oak built up, but I think it is a pleasant build up, and it gets to a certain level and it does not get any more oaky after that. So well balanced between the sweetness and the oak. A little bit of a toffee. It reminds me a little bit of a fudge, a dark chocolate fudge type of note. A little creamy and a little bit of a vanilla ice cream note. A hint of a cinnamon, if you give it enough time in a bottle, especially from half downwards, it gives me this nice cinnamon note, that hint of cinnamon. Oh, really nice. Now the next one is something that is going to surprise quite a lot of people, especially the followers, my 1,148 subscribers. I really appreciate it, and I always appreciate all the comments that I get. I will always try to remember and try to get to each and every comment. So appreciate you guys. And of course, the few people that's watching this far already, give it a like and a subscribe. And I will always answer your comments as well. So the next one, for the people that don't know me, this one was a surprise for me. And I'm talking about the Octomore 6.1. Also tried the 13.1, but for me the 6.1 is still the one that I always refer to as when I said I went for the peat monsters. And for me this was a peat monster, but it was not that big monster that I thought it was going to be. So Octomore 6.1, a really fantastic whiskey. Of course, single malt, only 5 years old. Pricing point, oh my word, that is something stupid crazy. I just cannot get myself to go buy another bottle of this one. It is just crazy expensive to pay that for a 5-year-old whiskey, bottled at 167 parts per million. So quite high on the phenol scale, a lot of smoke in it, but it does not smell like that and it does not taste like that. So for me, ex-American oak, so not a lot of sweetness in it, but you'll be quite surprised when we talk about the nosing and the tasting. So even at 167 parts per million on the phenols, it does not feel that high for me. If you put it next to a 50 or 60 part per million, you're not going to really notice a big difference. It is absolutely a stunning whiskey on the nose. Stunning peated whiskey on the nose, for me anyway. It's got lovely sweet notes, and even with that high ppm, you'll be surprised how fast you acclimatize to that notes, and it gets less and less and less, and it's like you move away all that smokiness and you get to the back and you find all these lovely notes at the back. Lovely sweet citrus notes. It's got a little bit of a moldy, wet, musty, earthy tones to the whiskey. Something like a dungeon or something like your basement, something that has got a little bit of a dampness. That's something that I picked up quite early on the whiskey. It reminds me a little bit of a decomposed wood with a little bit of mushrooms growing on it. Quite a nice smell for me anyway. A little bit of a brown sugar note, a little bit of a burnt caramel note. Also get a little bit of a cut grass note, that little green cut grass note. A little bit of a briny note, a little bit of a salt water, a little bit of a salty air note, dried peaches, and a little bit of a vanilla. On the taste, it's a little bit different. That high ppms definitely coming through. It gives you a lot of smoke, a little bit of a briny smoke, a little bit of a bonfire smoke, a sweet, dark, hot smoke coming out, especially with the little higher ABV. Burnt caramel, not for me overly complex, but it is such a nice drinkable one. Add a couple of drops of water to bring down the levels for you. For me, perfect like that. Small dram, small sip, and just enjoy it. One of the highest ppms that I've tasted, and I can absolutely tell you, buy it, try it, and if you're a little bit into the smoky whiskies, you will love this one. Well, except you would not like the price. The last one that I want to talk about, and that is number 5 on the list, I have bought 2 of them. This is the younger one, 5 years old, and this is a 10-year-old from the same distillery. And of course, I have to talk about the Ardbeg 10 and the Ardbeg Wee BC. Oh, now I have a bottle of the Wee BC. It is 47.4% ABV, natural color, non-chill filtered, 5 years old, Islay single malt Scotch whiskey, the ultimate whiskey that they talk about. I do like the labels. I like the green bottle. I like the simplicity of it. Not a lot of information. But then, of course, I also have a wee bottle of the 10-year-old. And for me, it's also quite an interesting one. Also 46% ABV, natural color, non-chill filtered. And if you hold them up together, 5 years old, look at the color, and 10 years old, look at the color. So I don't know how it works, but for me, the only thing I care about is which one is going to make the list. Now, I was not very happy with the 5-year-old when I opened up the bottle. And it took me some time, and it took a little bit of oxidization to decide between it, if I like it or not. There is a little bit of that It's a little bit of a tire note that you get, which I wasn't a big fan of in the beginning. And but it is a lovely light. It's light, nice, sweet smoke. A little vanilla, the dried fruit, apples, a little bit of a cinnamon, a little bit of an apple pie note, savory smoke. Reminds me a little bit of a barbecue. So quite pleasant actually. Just a little bit of that funkiness, a little bit of a tar note, a little bit of a tire air note that comes out. Sometimes it does put me off a little bit. If you take a 10-year-old, mellowed out, smooth, sweet, smoke, vanilla, that fruity component is still there. Apples, dried apples. Not much on the cinnamon. Again, quite a savory one. Not a lot of that TCP or hospital smell. A little bit of a smoked salmon coming out, but just a hint of it. Not the fishiness, just the smokiness. So quite pleasant. The taste on the 5-year-old, it's quite strong. Smoky, meaty, bacony, maple syrup, a little bit of a cinnamon note. And again, this one, give it some time in a bottle, it does change quite a lot. Let me just try. There's a friendliness coming out. In the beginning, when I opened a bottle, I did not experience any of that friendly notes. Fantastic for a beginner smoky whiskey drinker. A little bit of a dark chocolate note appearing. A little bit fruity. Let me just give it one more try. It is really nice. Give it some time. When you open up, it wasn't that good for me. Now, I don't want to give it away anymore. And the 10-year-old, oh my word. Again, with the 10-year-old as well. The longer it's in a glass, the longer that you've drained the bottle, the more oxidization that takes place, the more mellow it gets, the more great the flavors mingle with each other, the sweetness that come out, the caramel coming out, that smokiness, a lot less on the smoke than the 5-year-old. In the end, I need to make a choice which one's going to make the list, and I'm not sure. But I do like the boldness of the 5-year-old. I do feel like when I nose the 5-year-old, it gives me a little bit more. Although price-wise, not a big difference, maybe a €5, €10 difference between the two, which makes no sense for me, but in the end, I have to pick the 5-year-old. For me, it feels like it's giving me a little bit more than the 10-year-old. So that's my list for all the 5 top Islay whiskies that I've tasted over the last couple of years. What do you think? Which ones would you add to the list? I know there is so many out there. There's so many people that's going to shout, what about this? What about this? Well, you tell me which ones would you have on your list. So thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I see you next time. Cheers.